Hello YouTube, my name is Isabella and today I'm going to be discussing the 6 books I read in December. Hopefully this is quick, short, and snappy. So you know what? Let's not extend the intro. Let's just get into it. I knew in December my reading would take a hit. I planned for it. I was planning on cutting off my reading on the 21st of December so I could plan and do end of the year content. My reading did take a hit in December. Did I get my end of the year content out when I wanted? Absolutely not. The stress of working with the public during the pandemic when surrounding areas that you live by are getting shut down and people just coming your way, the stress of it about took me out. I've never been more stressed, anxious, and so uneasy in my life. And so my reading, it just wasn't working. I got the few books read that I needed to get done. Frankly, I'm lucky that I managed to complete the 6 books, but at least my wrap-up will be short because God knows my wrap-ups are way too long. So let's just do it. The first book I ended up completing was a book I didn't even intend on reading in 2020 or maybe ever. I just realized that physical reading wasn't working, so I should pick up an audiobook. And I saw this one was available from my library, so I decided to read Supernova by Marissa Meyer. This is the 3rd and final book in the Renegades trilogy, a trilogy about superheroes and a girl going undercover into the superhero operation to try and bring them crumbling down. It's campy. The first book was fun. The second book was really mediocre. And the third book, I think, came to a grinding, crashing halt. It was not at all what I was hoping this was going to be. Frankly, I ended up being really disappointed by it. I think this story just gets so nonsensical and ridiculous that it was far too long. The series should have been a duology. There are plot points that had been set up in the first one that kept getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back into the final book. And then these things finally happen and the reveals finally happen and they get retconned and switched up again. And you're like, no, wait, we've finally had this resolution. What do you mean now things have changed again? I also couldn't get over the fact that not a single adult, not one adult, had one brain cell between any one of them. How every adult was so stupid and naive. I also couldn't get over how this story is so black and white and how it looks like it's finally going to discuss some of the gray with life and how things aren't black and white and how things aren't good and evil, and yet it just kind of retcons the shit out of that. I couldn't get over the ending. I was really liking it at one point in time. I was like, yes, there are consequences to actions. People are facing consequences and they're going to have to regroup and move on from there. And then another event happens and it's just so dumb. I'm glad that I finished out the series. I'm glad that I got my answers, although I wasn't really thrilled with it. I gave the story 2 stars. The next book I read was a book I've been dragging my feet on all year. That's The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. This follows a boy in 1950s Spain after he's discovered this secret library with his father. He is charged with the protection of a really specific book that he utterly falls in love with. And when he tries to discover more about the author and the author's works, he realizes that there's this mysterious figure that has been systematically destroying the author's works and that he might now be in danger because of his interest in this book. This was not at all what I was expecting, and it was a very pleasant surprise to me. I'm not gonna lie to you, the first 150, 180 pages were a struggle, especially because we were following such a young teen boy. I couldn't get over the first 180 pages of it because he's just horny for 3 separate women. And I was the plot wasn't really moving. And I'm like, dude, let's do something because you just lusting after all these women is getting annoying. But once we got into the mystery and how things kept getting more complicated and the more reveals that we had, I found my interest level shift a lot. I liked the winding sort of narrative, how everything sort of comes back around. I really loved the writing. I thought it was beautiful. I usually find myself indifferent or not liking books about books, and also books like stories within stories, but this one was a really special one, and I found myself really, really enjoying it. I gave it 4 stars. I'm shocked because the first 150 pages, I was like, this is a 1-star read. I hate it. I don't know what the shift was, because again, my brain hurts and December was a hard month, but overall, I feel really positively about it. I understand why people love the story. 4 stars. I then decided to read Sight Witch by Susan Dennard. This is a prequel novella to the Truth Witchlands series, and I'm really excited to read on in the Witchlands series, but this is the next book. It's book basically 2.5. It follows Ryber, a character we've already been introduced to, but we don't know a lot about her and her background. And this fills in a lot of context about her, and it also, I think, sets up a lot for the grander ideas behind the story, which I really appreciated. I think this book accomplishes what it sets out to do, and it's really successful. It's a short book, it's fast-paced, it sets up stuff for the world and gives you greater context for what's to come. It gives us context into a character, into a relationship that we didn't really know about before, and it was a really fast read. I flew through this. I found myself invested. There's a ticking clock scenario that really helps move the story forward very quickly. I was impressed. It did a good job. 4 stars. I'm excited to read Blood Witch, although I'm so conflicted on when to do that, because I want to read Blood Witch when it's fresh in my mind to then read the 4th book that's coming out. So really excited about it, but I think I have to wait a bit. I then decided to reread via audio Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. This is one of my favorite books of all time, like top 3 absolute favorite books. I love it. There's stuff that I pick up and pick out about this story every time that I read it. This time I was really struck by like Lydia's character and how, yeah, she's kind of a brat, but she also gets taken advantage of by essentially a predator, and it's like a really upsetting scenario. Like, I have a lot more sympathy than I ever have before for Lydia. I also always love reading this because there are small details that you forget, and how this book shows so well the shift between Elizabeth and Darcy's hatred to love. Also, this book is so funny. I love Jane Austen's wit. I love the way she makes fun of her own characters. I love the wit behind here. The humor is always super enjoyable. I then went and read In a Holidays by Christina Lauren. I wasn't intending on reading this, but House Salt is a book club that I love watching and participating in. So I was like, yeah, it's on sale at my bookstore, whatever. I think I'll like it. Turns out I'm wrong. This follows a girl who's been in love with like a childhood friend for forever, and then she experiences like a Groundhog's Day scenario where she has to like try and make something right, and this book was just bland. The way that this is set up and pitched, it seems like there might be kind of a switch on who she's supposed to end up with. That doesn't happen. It's just such a straightforward, bland romance. How do you make a Groundhog's Day, like, repeating time, like, romance thing so bland and so straightforward? There's like no challenges they face. It's just like a flat line. My main takeaway was like, are straight people okay? Are they? Because she is so happy at one point in time that her love interest gets her like sparkling water, because like nobody's ever thought of her ever in her life. And the only thing that I've spent time thinking about with this book is I would like someone to tell me what color they consider this to be. My mom and I had a whole discussion about it. I'm leaning towards like a candy apple green or a winter green because it's not teal. And like I've thought about that for way too long. But the contents of the book, forgotten about, put out of my head. This book is a 2-star read. The final book I read was the final book on my 20 books to read on 2020 list. I successfully completed that, which was exciting, and it was Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi. I have been wanting to read this book for years. I've owned it for years. Finally did it. It is a graphic novel / memoir about a young girl growing up in Iran during the Islamic Revolution. I had very little knowledge about the Islamic Revolution in Iran, and watching this from the perspective of a young girl, how she's kind of interpreted things that are going on around her, was really interesting. I also really loved the humor in here. There is some really dark and upsetting stuff, some very triggering stuff, so please look up the trigger warnings. I like the balance of humor that this shows, and how this young girl, so frustrated by how society and her government is forcing her to act. There were some times where I actually busted out laughing because I just thought it was really funny, and I love how Marjane Satrapi was able to put that in here. I also had the realization that this was the only nonfiction book that I read in 2020, which needs to change. Check out my goals video if you're interested. This is also a translated work from French if you're interested. So I really liked it. I gave it 4 stars. That is it for my December wrap up. That's it for my 2020 wrap ups. I'm excited. Hopefully this was short. Let me know down in the comments down below if you have any thoughts on any of the books I read, or what your favorite book of December was. But as always, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Stay tuned for my end of the year best and worst videos. That should be coming sometime next week, I think. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Bye.